non-millimeter. So for today's Dharma discussion, I want to share some thoughts on Buddhist ritual. And the title of our Dharma discussion today is from a quote from Anne C. Klein, and she is a teacher in the Tibetan tradition. And the quote is, "Life is performance art, and so is Buddhism," and the role that ritual plays in that. So last week we talked about the role of affirmation, prayer within a Buddhist context. And it kind of makes sense to start now to kind of go into the ritual aspect of American Buddhism and how that relates to our practice. Every Sunday, matter of fact, I was actually thinking of this Sunday kind of changing it all up and not putting up any of the kanji, not putting up the Buddha, just sitting here in a bare room and not doing any of our normal ritual to kind of show a contrast of what it would be like without. And ultimately, it's irrelevant whether we have it or we don't in an ultimate sense. In the ultimate sense, these don't really mean anything, okay? But they are a language that can help us in our practice. And I'm going to talk more about that today. So every Sunday we say our communal affirmations and prayers. We light a candle, we light incense, and we bow. And for many of you, since you've been coming to fellowship, you've probably never bowed so much in your life. Okay? You never even imagined yourself to be a person who bows. And we've talked about bowing itself as practice and some of the resistance as Westerners that we may have to bowing as practice. But we may have some resistance to ritual anyway. So, what are some of our resistance to ritual for some of us? What?
Staying sober.
Staying sober. Okay. What else? What are some of the resistance we have to ritual? Yeah.
Just finding the meaning of what's going on. Many times I don't understand what the words are, what the emotions are, or why.
Okay. Understanding why. Okay. Yeah.
They can seem confining in thought.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Confining in thought. What else?
Seem dogmatic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, dogmatic.
Sometimes it just feels pagan.
And that's a bad thing? No, it's very true. It can do. Also, too, I think some of us, we come from a tradition that maybe had a lot of ritual. And I was raised Catholic. And then when I became a Latter-day Saint, I was so bored because there was no ritual. Until you get to the temple. Then it's all ritual. Kind of an interesting demarcation within the Latter-day Saint tradition. But that could be it. Maybe we have some resistance because where we come from. What else?
Almost feels like giving over control to another something else.
Okay.
Rather than
Okay, good. Yeah. Surrendering to an authority. Okay, good.
I'd say social normality. I mean, around us right now, there's not a lot.
Okay.
Being seen differently.
Okay. How about to superstitious? Hey, I'm a 21st century person. I believe in science. Okay? Why would I be doing this stuff if I believe in science? Yes.
sometimes it can, when you do it often, it can become more important than the reason you're doing it.
Okay. So an attachment to the form and not necessarily the meaning. Do we have a tendency to think of ritual as religious? Okay. That's not true. Anybody play sports? Anybody play baseball? Are there any rituals in baseball?
Work, right? You repeat certain things at work.
Oh yeah, there's work ritual. How many of you have a morning ritual? Yeah, or going to bed ritual. Okay? Ritual is any repetitive act that we do, and we're doing it for a reason. Okay? Now, I don't know if your going to bed routine or morning routine are like really efficient, make a lot of rational sense, or on a certain level, do you even choose it anymore, or has it become habitual? Okay? But we all have certain ritualistic things we do. Okay? Whenever we feel some resistance or tension when it comes to ritual, I think that's a good thing. I think whenever we feel kind of resistance in practice, it's a good thing because it gives us an opportunity to explore, to examine, to find out what the source of that resistance is. And especially since within the practice we're working with ego, I think a lot of times when we feel that resistance, it's ego trying to assert itself. Modern Buddhists, American Buddhists, often resist embracing ritual practice. But by working with our resistance, we can open up ourselves to ritual's liberating potential. Okay? So ritual itself has a liberating potential. But that being said, I think it's important to state that from my point of view, there is no mystical power in lighting a candle. There's no magical power in bowing to an altar or prostrating yourself to the ground and touching your head. Okay? We're not talking about that kind of magic. But that doesn't mean that there's not effectiveness or power within ritual. Ritual is not empty of meaning, or that there's no inherent power or psychological or spiritual power in ritual. These are true. These are avenues for our practice. But it's not this mystical, magical thing that we may tend to assign to the religious aspect of our lives. Okay? Does that make sense? Ritual can benefit our practice by helping us relate to others on a more mindful and intimate level. And I'd like to also say that it can be a nourishing part of our practice. As with prayer, some of us may have a negative reaction to ritual as something superstitious, infringing on our individuality, or something we do even when we don't believe in anything except science. Why would I do ritual? I only believe in science. And I think this tension is natural. But I think it's because how we define ritual and how we look at ritual. So in our practice, do we have a ritual when we meditate? Does anybody have a certain ritual they do? Okay. What's your ritual?
Similar to what I do here. I get in the morning. I go, first thing I get out of bed, I go into where I have a small sort of altar that looks out over my backyard. On that altar is very similar to this. There's a candle. There's a place I can put some incense. There's Kuan Yin. A few precious things that I've encountered and stayed with me over many, many years. And so I light the candle. I light the incense. I the bowl. I use 3 times with the bowl and drop it into 20, 30 minutes. Silence. It's not always silent.
So this is one example of a personal ritual form. Okay? And it's not imposed from anyone outside of you.
There's another ritual. I spent years, clear back from in the 70s, early 80s, involved with groups of men in men's groups. And initially it was to, sort of counteract in some ways the women's movement. Them, they started to express themselves. So we were trying to find, who we are really in the world. And we used to do a lot of rituals with that, smudging, sometimes sound, checking in, lighting candles, in a space of just men in a circle. And my sense of what we did that was to create a vessel of safety where we could disclose whatever it is we are or feel that's happening to us in a place that was, idea of non-judgmental. Not a lot different from here.
So there's an aspect of ritual that has to do with being embodied, as embodied beings. Okay? I think a lot of us know when we get really stuck in our minds, what tends to happen to our bodies. Anybody have stress-related disorders, stomach issues, muscle tension headaches, heart disease? A lot of these conditions can be directly related back to our mental states. Okay? So one of the things that ritual does is it helps us to take the formless and give the formless form. And you think about it too. I've officiated a whole bunch of weddings that they say, please, I don't want anything religious. I want my wedding, and okay, and I'm cool with that. I think I'm plenty non-religious. We don't even want it spiritual. Okay? But we want to participate in the ritual of getting married. So we can say that ritual is it's beyond, it transcends religion and spirituality. There is something innate in us as human beings that is attracted or communicates through ritual. Okay?
Shouldn't it just be an empty vessel to apply whatever meaning you think is appropriate for your current space?
Yes, and we will get to that. That's coming up. Yeah. So ritual is more than an empty motion from a distant or more superstitious past. Ritual is a form of language. I think kind of getting to what Eric is referring to. It's a language, a way of expressing what is important to us, individually and collectively. Individually, ritual can help us feel more connected to our daily experience, and more broadly, ritual is a simple act, or any simple act, of social interaction. Mm-hmm. So Gil Fronsdale is a Buddhist teacher, a mindfulness teacher, and he has this great quote regarding ritual. Quote, "Rituals as important elements of human life have been a significant aspect of Buddhist practice since the times of the Buddha. Rituals are a form of language that expresses many dimensions of our human condition, including our relationship to others and to our spiritual life. As actions done with others to share our common values, rituals help create community and mutual support. As a way of being mindful, they can bring us a heightened awareness to aspects of our experience needing attention. Ritual often involves symbolism and speaks to our unconscious. When done wholeheartedly, they help us discover and express some of our deepest feelings and aspirations." So, how do you think ritual can create community and mutual support?
I can say I'm a constructivist. That's a learning theory. As a teacher, I study that stuff. Constructivism says that we each construct our own meaning relative to those things which are meaningful to us in our lives and things that we've learned in the past. We construct ritual, all of us, from those things we need, those things we use, and fortunately, in this shrinking world, with the communications that we have, we are sharing cultural values with the rest of the world now. And we're constructing and sharing the thoughts and the rituals from those cultures. This all started in India, And it's ritual. We are, as creatures who create our lives, ritualistic creatures. That's just that natural.
A lot of times I really like ritual, and as much as I didn't really like religion when I first got back in, I still found some of that religion or ritual comforting to me. what you're trying to create in a group situation, as you those kind of things are just before to kind of bring a group together, and just in my own life. And boundaries for me, I love. I hesitate to do kind of other people because I'm like, it's out of my plans. I'm outside of my it's just an intention for them that, they're giving me something, I'm giving them something, and it kind of takes those thoughts and what comes from here and just kind of makes it into something new and tangible.
Seems you talk about ritual creating community, or benefiting community. It's like the ritual from many generations of ancestors sitting around a fire and planning to hunt for the community to go out and do that. Or how farmers or gatherers go out and they have a ritual as they do that. They gather the things they need and go out. So.
And mythologically, if you look at ritual mythologically too, it's a way for us to connect to the story of our tribe and the story of our cosmos. It makes us participants in the divine drama. So if we take that away and maybe look at it from a more secular perspective, it makes us a part of the story of our lives, the story that gives meaning, significance to our lives. Now the interesting thing is we tend to be in a secular society, which tends to say everything can be answered in the scientific world, and I would agree for scientific questions that the scientific method is the best way. But when it comes for me engaging in everyday life, understanding photosynthesis doesn't help me to be a kind of writer. That is a different kind of knowledge, a different kind of wisdom, a different kind of insight that we gain through our practice, through the practice of affirmation, prayer, intention, and ritual. It's a different type of knowledge. So one of the things I think is important is that ritual can help us to become more mindful. It can heighten our awareness. I think when we come in here collectively and we're reciting the prayers and the affirmations together, we're collectively sharing our commitment to the Buddha way. And I think that in itself creates a community and connection, that we have similar value structure and a similar intent. Anybody else have a comment?
Yeah. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed schizophrenic, and in learning what I was experiencing, I also developed obsessive compulsive disorder because I was putting meaning behind my rituals that I didn't set intent. I was asking questions. So I developed clicking the light switches on 5 times every time I was doing knocking on doors to sort of like making sure that every time I still have something. Like after I brush my teeth, I have a specific amount of time I tap my toothbrush and it's basically sleep. So I was just going to say, I feel like a lot of what can happen socially and community ritual is community and sitting there.
So again, similar to Buddhist prayer, Buddhist ritual is more on what happens within us and the transformation within us. Okay? The form itself ultimately is irrelevant if the form does not start to open up your communication with yourself and with your practice. Okay? If we chant wrong, we don't light the incense right, or it doesn't work, or we've even had fictitious incense because we forgot it. There's no impact. It doesn't mean anything. The Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas aren't going to go, oh, sorry, we're going to go to that sangha over there because they're doing it right. It's not for them. Bodhisattvas and Buddhas, in the Buddhist idea, they don't require require or need or even want offerings in the sense that there's some obligation. It's more on what it has within us and the effect it has in us and the dynamic of us as people.
Well, that's exactly what I was just going to say, in that you get lost in ritual, and the ritual takes the place of the actual experience and what it means. So there are those who think that because you go through the ritual, you've done what's necessary. It's not. What's really important is our transition, our awareness, our psychology, our learning, our experience, not the ritual. The ritual should help take you there, but those who think that that's the only important part is the ritual, that's where I have a problem.
So here's a beautiful thing. So Standing Rock, when there was the protest going on over the pipeline in Standing Rock, and the Sioux Nation, the Lakota Nation was there, and they said something which I've never forgot. They said, "We do not protest. We are not protesting the pipeline. We are doing ceremonial work to protect the river." It was a practice of ceremony.
Part of this is we lost, and it depends on who you read, but let's just say about 10,000 years ago, humanity really, as we shifted into agriculture, lost the sense of a liturgical universe. And it's really possible, if one is doing ritual with their heart open, that the whole cosmos is a liturgical ritual. The rising of the sun, the moon, the destruction, even all of those things are the body of the cosmos unfolding. And there's a place where you experience that the whole cosmos is a liturgy and alive. And then it's not the form, it's the opening of the heart and connecting to this incredible universe which is always unfolding in sacred presence.
So if we think about Standing Rock and we think about the elders saying it is ceremony, not protest, what does that distinction make? Is that distinction important, and how is that important?
It's affirmative and not, like it's not adversarial, it's positive energy and negative energy.
Kind of like the law of attraction, where like if you're afraid of something and you like fear essentially opposed to like acceptance, and prevention. Where if you're afraid of something, you're kind of bringing that negative energy as well, instead of like radiating like acceptance and love and like, feeling.
It's really, it's more a deeper, another level of meaning, right? That it's not just protection. This is what we do. This is a practice, not just stop.
Yeah. There's more of a totality of being. There's a groundedness. There's a groundedness in ceremony and rituals. Also, too, there's a certain respect and acknowledgement of inherent sacredness in what you're doing. Yes.
I think also about bringing together a community. When I think of coming to Sangha, I think of the community. My husband jokes around. He's like, "Are you going to church?" And when he says that, I'm like, "I don't know that." But when I think of Sangha, that I want to be here.
Yeah, I get that. We have a member of our Sangha, and she calls our Sangha song. I love that. There is more of that sense of celebratory aspect, that honoring aspect, that bearing witness aspect, that's inherent in ceremony. I love this quote from a woman named Donna Hennis, and she is an urban an urban shaman and a ritual expert, and she has this really great quote. She says, "Ceremonial observance adds lucid layers, depth, dimension, drama, and distinction to our lives, making the ordinary seem special and the special extraordinary. Through the practice of ritual, we are privileged to experience ourselves as prepared, present, passionate, principled, and potent. What we set aside, the quality time, and claim the psychic space for ceremony, when we assume the authority to do so, it's not an authority outside of ourselves. We're assuming that authority. To do so, we are able to transform our perception, our perspectives, our experiences, and the process of our reality." So, I want to bring this to washing dishes as a ceremonial activity and ritual. Okay? So, the Atlantic just came out, and there was a huge study done, and a professor at University of Utah was part of the study, and it was looking at marriage relationships, and it was looking at kind of the assignment of chores and roles and the dynamic that goes on in relationships. And they said the number one conflict point when it came to household chores, which actually diminished the quality of the marriage experience, was dishes. Of all things, dishes. And more so these were heterosexual marriages that we're looking specifically. It was more for the woman's experience. Predominantly in the 4,000 families they observed, they studied, the women did the dishes the majority of the time. It's this weird leftover patriarchy where, yeah, you were equal, but not when it comes to dishes. That's your job. Okay? And it's interesting. For the women whose men rarely did the dishes, they rated the quality of their marriages lower, the quality of their sex lives lower. So men, do the dishes. So here's and it's dishes. It's just dishes. But why I'm thinking of it as ceremony is it goes back to something that Shunryu Suzuki, the founder of the San Francisco Zen Center, said: dinner or a meal is not done until the dishes are done. And that's always stayed with me. And the crazy thing is, how many meals have I eaten that were not done for a week?
I like the barbecue. I'm omnivore. But my partner, she said one time, she says, I kind of resent barbecue because I have so much to clean up. I appreciate you making it or creating it, but so I kind of vowed and stayed to it was that if I barbecue, I also do all the cleaning.
Yes.
Can I just say, I just attended a dinner for, retirees named Rich, a gentleman, had taught for 46 years, and he got up to give his award, and his wife was sitting next to me, and I said, "Gee, what do you do for a living?" She says, "I'm a housewife." And I just about fell out of my chair, because, some of us here are old enough to remember when that was the norm, when women stayed home and men went out and worked. And we're old enough to remember going into barbershops where there were Playboy magazines and all the rest. And it was very common. It was assumed there was nothing wrong with it. We lived through, some of us have lived through that transition, and we see the difference. Fortunately, I've been married to a wonderful lady for 51 years. A lot of it is because I know how to clean the toilet. I know how to do the dishes when it's necessary to do the dishes. We still have some conflicts, but I lived through that transition, and it's interesting to see what that transition has brought. It's a wonderful freedom, and it's a wonderful expression, and women have the ability to do many, many things that we didn't think they should. Or not me, when I say we, I never thought they should. And it's great, because I used to read Ms. Magazine and all the rest, Women's Liberation, all that. I love it. I love what I've seen happening, and I hope it keeps on forever.
So what I want us to do is I want us to look at washing dishes as a potential ceremonial activity. Okay? A ceremonial activity. It's an opportunity for mindfulness. And again, a ceremonial activity is something that adds lucid layers, depth, dimensions, and drama and distinction. So if we look at washing dishes as a ceremonial activity, what could that ceremonial activity be? It can be gratitude. Okay? It can be awareness, interdependence. It can be all of these practices. It can be the thought of purifying our own karma. We can ascribe all kinds of meanings to the ceremony of washing dishes. And we can even make it a collective ceremony with our spouses or partners or children. Okay? It's not a chore, but ceremony. It's not protest, it's ceremony. And there's another place that we can do this, and I would encourage you, and I'm actually working on a book on this, driving dharma. Make driving ceremonial. Okay? Instead of protest. Which most of us drive as protest. Does that make sense?
I think that idea of taking what we learned here, or the Dharma that we're participating in, out into driving is probably one of the most powerful things I've ever done. I can tell how I am that day. Am I conscious or unconscious? By my awareness of what feelings come up in any moment in driving. And it's transformed. I like that.
So I'm going to share a quote from Who's de Wilt, who wrote an essay called "The Magic of Ritual in a Secular World." And he said that we've come to miss the sense of direction that regular repetition of ritual can provide. In the modern atheist vision, the human spirit has become a kind of pit into which something is dropped only to remain there forever. But in reality, even if we are moved by a poem we read or a piece of music we hear, often we forgot it the very next day. And that goes for our sense of moral values. When we know that it's better to be kind to our neighbor, it's just that we forget so to do it regularly. And this is the power of repetition in ritual. Art can serve as a reminder, can play an important role in ritual, bringing us together and lending meaningful meaning to art, life, and the act of living itself. So life is performance art in Buddhism. It is my mentor, Kakuyo Sensei, is continually calling us to do, is to be the artists of our own life. And ritual is a way for us to become the performing artist of our own life. So, to awaken is really what ritual is for, to become conscious of the moment. I want to share you a real quick Jodo Shin story. There's a farmer, and he's got done a hard day at work, and he's sitting on the little stone that's by his house. He's watching the sunset over the sea. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, this is so beautiful." So he runs in the house, he gets his Amida statue, brings it out, sits it next to him, and goes, "Isn't this beautiful? I wanted you to see it." Okay? So someone's like, "Oh, superstition, oh, primitive people." I look at it differently. I see it as it being an intimate relationship with ritual and with ceremony. This statue, which represents for him the meaning of the universe, the meaning that he subscribes to it, whatever meaning we want to subscribe to it as part of our practice, it's so intimate to him that he doesn't want Amida to miss out on the sunset. It's that sharing, it's that connection. Not about all that other stuff that people may ascribe to it. So, it's an intimacy that ritual can bring to our lives. In a literal way, the old farmer was watching the sunset with an inanimate piece of wood. But in a more real way, the old farmer was sharing the sunset with the intimate, formless world that can take any shape. And that is the purpose of ritual. The purpose of ritual are ways of recognizing the sacredness of the everyday, of the totality of life. to dissolve the usual arbitrary distinctions of sacred and profane that have cut us off from real engagement with the world and our living. So, as we live today, I want to encourage you to look at ways to incorporate ritual or ceremonialize everyday activities. As one writer put it, to cultivate the quality of attention to everything we do ritual. This is the potential liberatory power of ritual and repetition. So, going forward, 2 places where you can look at this and find your own way to create your own ritual or ceremony around it. Doing dishes and driving. Kakuyo Sensei, my mentor, one of the things he says is that when we drive, one of the things we can do is bow to our car before we get into it. Grateful that we have a car, that we can get from point A to point B, and also the potential it has to do good and to do harm. Okay? And the other thing is we have a wheel in our car, a steering wheel. That brings to mind the wheel of the Dharma. And it says in the old Pali canon that the Buddha turned the wheel of the Dharma. And we can turn the wheel of the Dharma when we drive. So ritual and ceremony help us to be attentive, deliberate, intentional, aware in the moment. Okay? So I challenge you this week to go forth and look for those opportunities to be ceremonial, to look for the ritual in your life that helps you in your practice, that opens up your practice in a way that you may not have experienced before. Namo Buddhaya.